it basically boils down to if Nebraska's winning enough,
Yeah.
I just don't think the fan base will care.
The funny thing to me about the whole thing, and Shafe brought up a good point with this, is we kind of bemoan guys that leave, and we're like, "Oh man, can't afford to leave," and get all upset, and then we, in the same sentence on the other side of our mouth, say, "Oh well, they're not going to get drafted," or "Oh, they'll never make
Yeah.
it." We almost try and disregard their contributions while at the same time being upset that they're leaving because it's going to be hard to replace them. And both of those things cannot be true at the same time, right? They're either good enough to get drafted, which is why you're upset that they're leaving, or they're not good enough to get drafted, which means they're replaceable, right?
Has there ever been a stretch where, I mean, Brandon Jackson came to mind because I couldn't believe
Like the outrage.
yeah, and I liked him a ton, so
I
I
did
felt,
too. I was
and,
weirdly a Brandon Jackson guy,
and it bugged him.
and I liked how he
It,
ran.
it it bugged him.
He was from Mississippi, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
you know,
real good back.
and I don't, he just didn't love the fact that people didn't understand that he wanted to. He's like, any money I'm making is more than what I'm making for my family.
Yeah,
And so
like this is
whatever
a
it was,
different
it was a third
conversation.
round or whatever,
Yeah, this is a different conversation 20 years later,
right?
right?
AG, third round, could have come back or whatever it was. I'm like, guys, listen, we don't even know like the situations,
Right.
right? But I just don't know when Nebraska will.
Get past that.
Yeah, like I'm more mad at my colleagues and peers for how they got into the weeds with the James Williams stuff than I was James Williams.
Second round for Brandon Jackson, by the way. So obviously he got at
You
least some
know,
decent advice.
so like what? At some point, that can't bother us. And maybe it is. Maybe it is only a small section,
Maybe.
but it doesn't seem like it though.
So you're right. The Knighton thing was worse.
I, I'd let that go.
The Knighton thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I wasn't. I'm like, okay. I don't get it. It was unnecessary. But just because I wouldn't do it,
So most of the excuses we make for James Williams don't apply to Knighton. Young, maybe I'm a little emotionally immature,
uh,
maybe doesn't know better. Like Knighton should know better, right? And I think what it is for me, it isn't about James Williams leaving, right? We talked about this yesterday, I think, where
I mean, he's gonna want to go with the guy that took care of him.
right. So I understand that. And if he looks at a situation, he goes, "Hey, I need my relationship, I need a little bit of money, and I want to be with Coach Knighton." And those are the three things he's looking for, and those boxes get checked. I get it. I get
And
why
and
he
maybe
leaves.
he wanted to be away from what was going on here.
And frankly,
That was a little toxic.
sure. I do think I think part of it with James Williams specifically is that it feels like we took a chance on him when no one else was willing to. And he doesn't seem grateful for that. I think that bothers people. I'm not saying he should feel grateful, but I think people want him to have some gratitude for what Nebraska did for him and put him in a position where he could go to a place like Florida State.
You want an example of what you're talking about?
Sure.
Just protecting holistically the person.
Mhm.
So, do you think there's anybody in the state, in the media, that had a better relationship with James Williams than I did?
Probably not.
You think James Williams trusts me to talk?
Probably.
Okay. So I called Keith Mann
Mhm.
and I said, hey, this is on the heels of him having the emotional hug and the embrace with Coach Knighton.
Mhm.
And I said, hey, Captain, want to follow protocol. Can I get an interview request with James?
Mhm.
I said, it's safe. This is a true story.
Yeah.
I'm just going
Oh,
to
I
tell you
remember.
I'm just going to tell you how good the university is.
Mhm.
In particular, Keith and Coach Rhule. And Keith's like, well, we're a little sensitive with that. Why don't you just ask Coach Rhule? And I was like, okay. Didn't want to go over your head, yada, yada, yada.
Mhm.
So I asked Coach Rhule, and he said, hey, normally I would say yes. I don't want too much too fast. Let's pass this time around. Come back to me in a year, and we'll see where we're at.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
I'm like,
He's trying to protect his guy.
I'm like, I'm just giving you me originally. I'm like, because I wasn't that easy.
Mhm.
I was like, come on, man. I said, it's me. In my head. I didn't
Yeah.
say it out loud.
Yeah.
So when we hung up, I texted back and I was like, oh, I said, I could understand that. Baby steps. And he, did the little fist pound thing. The more sometimes you turn people over to themselves,
Mhm.
the less it comes across as loving.
Sure. Yeah.
I think he's just loving them through the situation, right? Like trying to make the most
Yeah.
of, hey, this guy doesn't always need a microphone.
Sometimes you understand their limitations better than they understand their own limitations.
100%.
And it may feel like
And he was protecting him from himself.
Mhm.
Although, even though he was the same guy
Mhm.
that he turned loose on official recruiting visits at the player podium.
Yeah.
But do you know what he said? You have to be able to have somebody tell the story, the good and the bad, so everybody has
Mhm.
the same facts. So in that environment,
Yeah, it's a different environment.
he's willing to turn him loose because it was him, Canuck, and Carol Jackson,
Mhm.
which was a very interesting
It's a
dynamic.
strange group.
They're all powerful in their own way. VCJ was very appreciative of finding him when they did on the recruiting trail and investing in him and conversations. Williams was about the opportunities they afforded him off the field
Mhm.
more than on the field, right? Meeting him right where he was at. And Canuck is the guy that he's still waxing poetic about,
Mhm.
which I find very interesting. He's on the Canuck and Segrin thing.
Mhm.
And I liked Segrin. And I remember we talked about him on the show as kind of the number 2 tackle, and I mean, people were mortified, and
Yeah.
I get it. He was a little guy kind of at the time.
Yeah.
But when's the last time you remember him going into depth over 2 guys, both personally and how they're progressing from a developmental standpoint?
Yeah.
It's usually one or the other,
Yeah, he doesn't do it very often.
if at all.
Yeah, he doesn't do it very often. He doesn't single guys out very often in general, right?
Yeah, and that's Canuck and Segrin in back to back.
And if he's going to single guys out, it's usually about what they're doing off the field.
Yeah.
Right. He wants to talk about, what they're doing for the program and things like that, kind of who they are as people.
Mm-hmm.
It's even more rare that he talks about what they're doing on the field specifically. But to do both, as you mentioned, with 2 guys in back to back.
I mean, he talked about the people that Canuck had come in contact with, where he,
Yeah.
held the camera or mowed the yard, or. I mean, it's clear, at least in my opinion, the culture that they're trying to build,
Mhm.
and some of it isn't even football related, and we have to just be patient.
I would say most of it is not directly football related.
We just have to be patient, because if he's going to withstand this volatile
Mhm.
time, he's going to have as many as many constants
Mhm.
as possible.
Yeah.
I think that's his countermeasure. I think he wants to work smarter longer, as opposed to scrambling in the short term. That's why he's building the culture that you don't want to leave, and to make sure you do have all the information, and you know what I mean? It's like, I don't know. I think you can just see what he's trying to do.
I can for sure. I do think, and I think it's worth bringing up in this conversation, there's only so many places you can make that play,
Yeah.
right? Because Nebraska is going to be competitive with the money, right? They're going to be competitive with the NIL.
I agree.
There's probably some places that would like to try and do it this way, but there's such a gap between their NIL and what other people are offering that you can't make up the difference with culture, right? You can't make up the difference with some of the other things. The fact that Nebraska is always going to be competitive on the money side of things gives Coach Rhule an opportunity to do things like this, where he can say, hey, I want to make this a place you don't want to leave. We may not be your best offer, but we're going to be a good offer. It's going to be competitive. And the money's not going to be so different that you're going to look at it and go, most kids won't look at it and go, oh, I have to leave. I'd be doing myself a disservice if I don't leave, right? If you're making $100,000 one place and somebody else offers you $1 million and it's a real offer, you're doing yourself a disservice not to look at it, right? But if you're offering $900,000 at Nebraska and somebody else is offering you $1 million to go someplace else, then you're looking at it and you're going, okay, those numbers are close enough.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
That maybe other things are worth the extra $100,000 at Nebraska versus going to this other place. Maybe they will develop me better and I can play for long money in the NFL as opposed to the short money in college. Or maybe I will have better recovery and I'll end up healthier, or I'll end up with my degree or whatever, right?
Can you see where he's trying to put other tools in the tool belt? And, like, let's say you just need a hammer, a saw, and a tape measure to play football.
Mm-hmm.
where he's trying to give you the screwdriver, the
Give you like
T-square, the
the drill bits, all
the,
like
the other
yeah.
stuff, and not in case it doesn't go the way you want to, but to help you go the way that he wants it to.
Well, and I think that he realizes on some level that even if everything goes exactly how you want it to, right? Exactly how you want it to. You come to Nebraska. Let's say you want to play for 3 years and go to the NFL. And then you want to play in the NFL for 12 years. That's a great career. That's multiple contracts, right? That's that long money we're talking about here. Let's say you're Levante David. Like, let's say your
So you're
career.
going super best case scenario.
Yeah, I'm saying like it goes exactly how you want it to. At some point, Levante David is going to need the other tools in the tool belt. At some point, right? Ndamukong Suh at some point needed the other tools in the tool belt. And whether it's the businesses that he's investing in or the construction company stuff that he does or whatever, right? Like that money, the NFL money, whatever it is, the NFL career doesn't last forever unless you have the other tools, right? It can give you enough money to have a really nice head start. But most people are going to need the other tools, unless you're Tom Brady, who made enough money that he didn't really have to have any other tools. But unless you're Tom Brady, you're going to need other tools in your tool belt to figure out, okay, how do I make this money last me for the rest of my life? How am I in a good position to be a good husband, father, person, whatever, pillar of the community, whatever, right? At some point, it ends, and you have to have other things that you're equipped for. And how many times do we see guys don't? We hear all these tragic stories about what happens to guys when they retire, or they run out of money, or they have problems at home,
or just being kind of a whole person too. I think,
or they're just depressed, right? They're just not. They have no fulfillment in their life because they don't know what else to do now. That's what we're talking about here. And if you can get guys, and I know it's really, really hard at 18 years old to see that picture when you're 35 or 40 and saying this is what matters, because the football stuff, there's a lot of places that can get you to the NFL. There's a lot of places to get you to the NFL, especially if you're a good player.
Did you hear Kirby Smart in his presser the other day?
Not all of it.
Talking about he had guys stand up and raise their hand that had been through 3 or more spring practices, and how barely anybody raised their hand, and how he had a young team, and the standard isn't really the standard right now because guys don't know how to practice and they're getting tired. And he said they're not responsive to coaching. And I thought it was interesting that at this stage in his career, with what they had built, that the culture isn't taking over.
Sure. But when you've got this much movement, it's hard.
It just to hear it from the other side. I'll see if I can find it.
Well, because there was a moment.
I was captivated.
You've told me about this, right? There was a moment in 96 when you're sitting there, and that culture in 92, 93, 94, 95 was pretty set, right? 93, 94, 95, pretty set, right? And then you get to 96,
2 was
and you've told me there's stuff as leaders you wish you would have done differently.
Yeah.
Right?
I was pretty honest about that.
So even in that situation where like that looked as 94, 95 especially, that looked as rock solid as a culture as we'll ever see, right? And you go and just 1 year removed, and this is pre-transfer portal. Yeah. Just 1 year removed, there was enough erosion in terms of just guys, right? Enough of the guys that were important to that culture left, just moving on to the next part of their career, that there was a little gap. There was a little gap in that. Now you add in a transfer portal. You add in Georgia, where you've had a ton of guys. I mean, as many guys leaving Georgia for the NFL that were leaving Nebraska for the NFL at the time, plus the transfer portal. It's really easy for me to see how, like, if you don't have enough connective tissue left, like, there's no structure. There's no culture left.
And it
can happen fast.
Yeah, and I think I'm going to butcher it. But he talks about having a house versus a home.
Coach Rhule?
Yes.
Yeah. You've brought this up to me before.
And how he wants to make Nebraska a home. He said anyone can have a house.
Yeah, it's just a place you live.
We're building a home.
This is what to return to.
This is what we want in our home. And sure as I'm sitting here, it's just intentional. It's going to be the way that he's going to combat and attract transfers. It's going to be the way that he can still go out and recruit at high school. What did he just slide in the other day when he said, hey, if you're a guy that doesn't really care that you'll have to go back and get something or change something that you've told a potential recruit, sure, knock yourself out during this stretch. We need to be a little more careful so we don't have to apologize, so we can be the people that we said we are. Because he knows, like, the countermeasures to beating the tests are in how calm, cool, and collected you could be leading up to it.
It sounds so simple and honestly kind of stupid, but he's said this before about just coaches being who they say they are. Like, that's the cheat code to the transfers, right? Because, and it sounds so dumb and too simple, right? It sounds, and it, again, this is a simple versus easy thing. It sounds too simple to just say, hey, if we tell you this, this is what's going to happen. Yeah. If we say you're going to get this amount of money, that's the amount of money you're going to get. If we say you're going to have this opportunity, X, Y, and Z, that's the truth. If we say, hey, you'll be on the 105, you'll be on the 105.
And what did he say? He put himself on the clock, right, up against the wall. He said, now, if you said, I don't trust this guy, he's lied to me.
He said, all right, go ahead.
He's like, okay, I get it.
All bets are off, right?
Yeah.
How many guys do you think that's actually true of?
That's what I'm saying.
Like, none, probably.
It's, I mean.
Now, he may have told some guys things they didn't want to hear.
But I thought it was interesting because there's power in that. Like, you know, sometimes.
Not just power, there's freedom in that.
Yeah, well, sometimes if I'm telling a story, it's conflict resolution. And sometimes I'll say, hey, you know, stop me when I tell a lie.
Yeah.
If you don't stop me or I'm telling you the story, then that's letting you know you got to take some ownership and kind of what's going on out here.
Yeah.
You know, and I think he left himself open to, man, you didn't, you know, James isn't going to say you didn't tell me the truth. Bear isn't going to say you didn't tell me the truth.
Do you think anybody that's left would say that it's because Coach Rhule didn't tell them the truth? Anybody?
No.
Right? Everybody left for other reasons. A little bit more money over here, a little bit better opportunity over there. Like, I get why Danny Kaelin moved on.
Yeah, me too.
Opportunity.
I told you, I'm not.
Right? Don't have any problem with it.
None.
Totally understand. He wanted a chance. And this is why I brought up the opportunity thing early on as a thing that I sort of get conflicted about, right? Because I look at a guy like Danny Kaelin, and Danny Kaelin probably looks at it and goes, okay, I'm in the same class as Dylan Raiola. I'm probably not going to get a chance to play.
Yeah. So you know the byproduct of that?
Even if he's super competitive, right?
Did you catch when he went into the two camps and he said there'll be some guys that just aren't going to be good enough and they're going to say, hey, I just want to be here? Well, he said, well, we'll have to weigh that decision.
Yeah.
Right? Which lets me know you still have a job to do. You still have to perform in such a way.
Absolutely.
Where you're giving me at least the inkling that you're trying.
But they're going to tell him the truth in that situation too.
100%.
Right? That's why I brought up the 105. They told the guys that weren't going to be on the 105 and earlier than they had to, right? Because I'm sure Coach Rhule had an inkling that they might try and taper this thing, right? Because a lot of other people did. Now, but he wanted to be fair to those guys and say, hey, you're probably not going to make it. Right now, you're on the outside looking in. Or, hey, you're fighting for one of those spots, but I can't make any guarantees. Or, hey, you're going to be on the 105, right? That's a situation where some of the guys told him, hey, I'm at Nebraska till you kick me out, right? Or some of the guys said,
one guy told him that, and I think he's going to end up playing. Like, they tried to get rid of him.
Yeah.
He just wasn't having it.
And then you have other guys
who's going to play
that are like, okay, I'm going to take this to go move on and try and find other opportunities. Yeah. And I don't begrudge him for that either, right? That's why, like, I sit here and I go, listen, I love competition. I love it when there's
So I got something for you.
Yeah.
Do you know what I think he's ultimately talking about?
What's that?
This may be a reach.
Okay.
So, I mean, feel free to give pushback. I think the environment in which those guys are practicing, it trims its own fat.
Sure.
So it is so competitive within those position groups. Like, those guys know when they're not meeting the standard. That's the point that they're getting. I'm serious. I saw it first with the O-line. O-line reveals itself. Listen,
Well,
If you're the
and
one
Donnie
that's not
doesn't mess around.
if you're the one that's not like the others,
Yeah.
it reveals itself. So you got options. You can either go find something else different to do,
Yeah.
or keep grinding. And if you keep grinding, see, they'll know.
And there's some
And you know where else you're starting to see it?
where's that?
In the secondary.
Defensive backs room, yeah.
In the secondary.
Which is not a place you would typically identify as where that would happen.
No, but that's the three
Offense,
guys.
yeah.
That listen, that's Snow, that's Addison Williams, and that's Butler.
Mm-hmm.
Like the standard is clearly the standard. So, like you don't want to get to the point where you take yourself out, but you do want to get to the point where you say, man, that's on me. Right? I didn't start running plays out 45, 50 yards routinely until it was so awkward that I was one of the only three that wasn't.
Yeah. There's some, and there's a negative connotation to this term, but there's some peer pressure that could be positive there about like, hey, do it the right way, knock it off.
That's how you want it.
Yeah.
That's
there
how you
has
want
to
it.
be some internal pressure from your peers to say, hey, that's not how we do things. Right? We always talk about peer pressure as a bad thing, about like, oh, they're trying to convince me to do this. Sometimes it's, hey, this is how it works here. Either get on board or get out.
Yeah. And then you eventually get to the point
where it weeds itself out a little bit.
Where Singleton or Buford or somebody can say, hey, that away, young buck, or Teddy Prohaska can cheer on Segrin and say, listen, man, that a boy.
Yeah.
So it's different than when Dylan does it with Gramstad, but it's the same with regards to Dylan doesn't have to do it because he's established, but he still wants the best for you.
Yes.
Even though it's kind of independent of him.
Yeah.
It's really no different in the desired outcome of when I want the best for you, and it can totally affect me.
Sure. Yeah.
Right? It's still birthed out of me wanting the best for you.
Yeah.
Like, that's what you want. If you're this is going to sound crazy. That's how you win 14-10 games on Saturday. It isn't. Some of it is talent because you have to be in the position. But when it's nut cutting time, and you don't want to full-fledged wet the bed, it has to be about something other than you.
Yeah.
I'm just telling you. Down 17-9 wasn't talent. You know, down at the half against Wyoming wasn't talent. Right? We were playing like poop, right? But who wanted to be the next guy to let the next guy down?
Yeah.
That's how you got to think. And when they get to that point where you can truly sharpen iron, even though you're going to get a few sparks, that stuff will go away.
I mean,
and he does it with the staff, man. Like, this dude is relentless.
I sit here and I think about the games that Nebraska's lost over the course of 10 years or whatever, right? And I think about the times that I go, yeah, that team was just better. It's not most of them, right? Especially the close ones, right? There's been times where, Ohio State or Michigan or somebody kicks Nebraska's teeth in. You're like, that team's a lot.
You've only seen it a handful of times.
Right. But there's a handful where you're like, oh, man, that team's just better right now. But the team that won the national championship last year and Nebraska looked an equal to them on the field for 90% of that game, didn't look like that was a big talent issue. I watch them lose to a mediocre Iowa team, and I don't go, nah, that's a talent issue. I don't see all the losses to, some of the Wisconsin teams are pretty good, but some of them not a talent issue. Most of the Iowa losses, not a talent issue. Illinois losses, not a talent issue. Minnesota, certainly not a talent issue. I can go through every team in the league, basically. I mean, Nebraska's lost some to Purdue and Northwestern. You think that's a talent issue? I don't care. Like, I will say this blanketly as a blanket statement. There's never a situation where Northwestern or Purdue is going to be more talented than Nebraska. I feel comfortable saying that till the day I die, right? Like, it's just not going to happen. But Nebraska's been losing games to teams like that. That is not a talent issue. That's what we're talking about here. We're talking about, okay, what do you do? What does your team do? What does your position group do when something starts to go wrong? Is it okay? Is it culturally okay in that room to be the guy that makes the next mistake? Yeah. Or is it culturally expected in that room that you're going to step up now? That's the difference.
I know that's how you're going to win close games.
Yeah. And they're going to have to start to.
I do, because they'll be in several of them.
Got to keep watering the bamboo.
That
Yeah, got to keep watering that bamboo.
one of the greatest voices alive.